Shalom and welcome to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and I've got a question for you. What are they doing with your DNA? Oh, you got that 23andMe kit, and you just went out there and you want to know who you were, your complete identity. But that went into a database, and those databases are being sold, marketed, and hacked all over the world. Well, what can they really do with your DNA? It's not like you gave them your social security card. It's not like you gave them your driver's license or your bank account numbers or your password. No, you gave them something even more important to one person, and that's Satan. Why would Satan be interested in your DNA? Well, because there's a Y chromosome marker that determines whether or not you are part of the line of Aaron. Yes, Aaron, the priest in the Bible. Well, why does that matter? Because the Sanhedrin has to reform, and the high priest has to take his position as a direct descendant of Aaron in order to call for the return of Jesus. You can imagine what Satan would do with your DNA if there was a way to weaponize your DNA and take you out. Well, that's the story behind the CODIS. Best-selling biblical thriller, authored by me, takes you on a journey through the weaponization of DNA in this battle that's coming. Satan knows that it's going to be Jesus that takes him out, and he's done everything he can for the last 6,000 years to try to keep Jesus from being born and from returning. And it's through your DNA that he just might be able to win. On sale right now, $2.99 on Kindle. And I want you to visit our website, ignitinganation.com. Scroll to special offers. You'll see a cover of my latest book, The 7 Laws of Abundant Living, Lessons Learned from the Tree of Life. Click on that book cover. We're going to ask for your email address. We won't send you spam because spam is not kosher, but we will send you the first chapter of this book, which lays out 7 spiritual truths found in lessons from the ground, from the roots, from the trunk, out to the branches, the leaves, and to the fruit. 7 lessons and 7 lessons within each lesson of God using the natural to reveal supernatural truths. Get it today on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any place that sells good books. I'm very pleased to welcome back to the program a return guest, Arlene Pellicane, author of the newly released book, Parents Rising, 8 Strategies for Raising Kids Who Love God, Respect Authority, and Value What is Right. Arlene is a speaker, author, media personality, and blogger. She's written 7 books. 31 Days to Becoming a Happy Wife, 31 Days to a Happy Husband, 31 Days to Becoming a Happy Mom, Growing Up Social, she wrote that with Gary Chapman, 31 Days to a Younger You, Calm, Cool, and Connected, and her latest, Parents Rising from Moody. Arlene has appeared in major media outlets, including the Today Show, focused on the family, Fox and Friends, Family Life Today, the 700 Club, The Better Show, The Hour of Power, Turning Point with David Jeremiah, and many more, and has been interviewed on radio programs and written for national magazines. She earned her BA from Biola University, Master's from Regent University. Before becoming a speaker and author, she served as a featured reporter for the 700 Club and Associate Director for Turning Point Television with David Jeremiah. Arlene lives in a happy home in San Diego with her husband James and kids Ethan, Noel, and Lucy. You can learn more about her at www.arlenepellicane.com. Arlene, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. It's always a joy to talk to you.
Thank you so much. You have shared in our last interview, you took us on a journey of what life was like in an unplugged world. And it was kind of a foreign concept. It was kind of presenting an entirely new paradigm to this technologically engaged and plugged in world that we live in, and how you live unplugged. And how you are raising your kids to be engaged, which is exactly the model of the millennials that are looking for deep and abiding relationship. This is how you're raising your family, and this is the kind of message that you're espousing. For our new audience that doesn't remember you from the last time, maybe take us on a journey of your faith walk and what the influences were, where you got to this point in life where you made the decision to become the kind of mom and parent and wife that you become.
Mm-hmm. I came to Christ as a young girl, and we had been going to Catholic church for a long time, but my mom went to a home Bible study thinking it was for the children, and it ended up being for her. And she kind of thought, wow, I like reading the Bible in this way. It opened her heart towards that. And then there was a very large church in our area that my parents said, let's visit that. And I, as a child, said, oh, I really like that place, because they sing and do all these things. And so we came to Christ when I was a young girl, raised in a Christian home from that point forward. And when I graduated from high school, I knew, well, I like speaking, but when you are 16, 17, 18 years old, what do you go out and talk about? So I continued my studies and worked at Biola University in their communication department with their admissions department, and basically thought I would love to speak and write, but I'm not quite sure how that journey looks. I worked in television, worked with the 700 Club with David Jeremiah, and then when we had our first baby, my husband and I, James, we married in our late 20s, and I knew I wanted to have children, but had struggled with that, with infertility. That was an unexpected part of the journey. So when we actually had that first child in 2004, it was like, this is a miracle. You feel like we got our own. And I knew that much of my life then, for those next, 18 years or so, would be dedicated around mothering and being at home. But I also enjoyed writing and speaking. So my husband, James, really encouraged me, why don't you write and speak from home? And that's how it all started. And then you write about the things that you care about, and raising children and having a marriage and those things. I thought, well, those are the things I really care about. So this idea of a happy home, and what can I do to encourage moms who are like, yeah, I've been married 5 years, or I've got these kids, I can't wait till they grow up. What can I do to show her, like, hey, you're really blessed that you have a husband. My goodness, you've got children. What a privilege. What can I do to encourage that woman along the way? And that's kind of how those books started.
It's interesting that your approach to how you've raised your family is really quite a unique model, but it's one that's been successful because your kids are fully engaged. Mm-hmm. Maybe you can describe how you and your husband came to the decision as to, once you had your priorities of God first, then your husband, you had season in your life where it was just the two of you. So there were decisions that you made about, and discussions that you had. You being a natural communicator, I'm sure that you covered before the marriage and then during the marriage expectations of what your visions were.
Here's the lecture of what we're looking for.
Right, there you go. Here's the menu, and you get to pick from column A.
Right.
But there is no column B. So you established a home environment, and you created a model that seems to be incredibly successful for you, but it's different. It's a different home life than other families seem to be sucked into. Entertainment, using devices for distraction as opposed to teaching opportunities. All those things you address, and you've put power and authority behind it because you actually lived it. This is not theory with right. you. This is actual in practice. So give me the top line vision that you and your husband crafted for your marriage first, and then once you had your first child, how that changed.
Mm-hmm. So we have 3 children. They are in 3rd grade, 6th grade, and 8th grade at the time. And when my husband and I were first married, we got this advice, like, never let the honeymoon end. And the idea was, if you just do those small things to keep staying in love, then you don't have to do that huge repair 10 years down the line. So it's just that, as 2 lines go, if one starts to go a different direction, after a while, you're in very different places. But if you can stay close together, so never let that honeymoon end. So that's something you have to work at. I mean, we were 11 years into the marriage, teaching at a young marrieds class, realizing that, okay, all these newlyweds were like this, so close together, hugging each other, touching each other. And my husband and I were sitting about 3 feet away from each other teaching the class. And we realized, okay, wait. So it's this constant looking, evaluating, oh my goodness, we've forgotten how to be romantic. And this still happens, right? Oh, we need to kiss, we need to hold hands. So this isn't like one time fixes all. It's a mindset, an attitude, a prayer of God, keep us close together. So I think the mindset going into parenthood was always, Lord, keep us close together, and may our lives not revolve around the children, but may our children be included in our family life as welcome members, but that this couple doesn't disappear. The marriage doesn't disappear. It still is in the front seat after the baby grows up and doesn't need all the 24-hour 7, care, that marriage still comes into place. And what you're saying, it makes my heart sad in the sense of what I'm experiencing now as a mom is available to every person, and it should be 99% of the population should enjoy this because it's very simple. It's not like we're doing something so crazy, but it's this idea of, okay, thy kingdom come, thy will be done. God, you be the head of the family. And then the husband's love, for my husband to love me, for me to respect him, to submit to him, and this is regardless of how we act. If I act very unlovable, he still has to love me. And if he acts in a way that I think like, oh, you should have done something different, I'm still respecting you. So it's just this simple husband's love, wives respect, and then children obey your parents. But we've gotten it all kind of backwards. Like, okay, God, I hope you fit into my plan. I hope you fit into what I want. So that gets kind of skewed. And then for the husband, well, she acts in that way. I'm not going to listen to her and love her. She doesn't respect me. And then for me, I'm not going to respect you. You didn't help with the kids today. And then the kids are calling the shots, and the parents are just like, please don't throw a fit, So it's when just those simple orders that the Bible lays out, when those are messed with, chaos ensues. But when you honor those things and trust the word of God, maybe you don't see the result the very next day. Like I tried that on Monday, it didn't work. But you live this way and you honor God's word and you obey in the family, you will see the fruit. And what you're referring to as a difference in our family has really come into the fore because of technology. So, most of the kids today, what do they look like? They're looking at their phones and their head is buried in their phones, and they're at, and so my children do not own iPads. They do not own phones at ages 8, 11, and 13. They will not own a phone until they drive. And even that is not a for sure thing. And they know that. And we live in San Diego. It's not like we live under a rock. They go to a public school of over 1,000 kids. And so this is a different thing. But we have computers at home, and they have iPads that are issued from school in junior high that they do their homework on. And so they are familiar with everything out there. But I tell you, there's a big difference. I was just this morning out to breakfast with my 6th grader, and we do this just once in a while, so don't think I'm so amazing and holy, but once in a while we go out to breakfast and we study the Bible. And as we're at this little breakfast place, there are screens now on a few of the tables, and we're trying to find, she especially, which is so funny to me, is trying to find a quiet spot, right? That the screen is not just blaring commercials in the background. So we find a spot, but then a family comes in and a little boy's got a phone. He's probably 8. He's got a phone and he's listening. He's just watching, staring at it at the breakfast, really loud, just staring. And I'm thinking, look at the experience I'm having with my daughter. We're eye to eye, laughing together, reading the Bible together, bringing out stories, talking about her classmates. Do they act like this about this verse in the Bible, and laughing? And look at the family right next to us, a few tables down. Their kid is just staring straight at the screen, and they're just eating in silence as both of them, kind of the adult and the child, look at the screen. It's totally different. So there's a place for technology, but that, my friends, that's not the place. And that's what our family has done differently, and we have enjoyed it. It's so much nicer. And so you can take those baby steps backwards as a family. Like if you think, oh no, it's too far gone, you can still, if your kids are under your roof, you can start and say, hey, when we go to restaurants, we're all going to put away our phones, mom and dad included. And you can take baby steps backward to reclaim that relationship that has to be there, that the screens so distract you from, because they are so alluring for all of us.
Arlene, it's interesting as I reflect back on my daughter.
Mm-hmm.
I was in the technology business, so I was strapped to technology from the 70s when I was with AT&T and had to have a phone in my car. and that required a big trunk installation and a huge mount. And so
Yeah.
all I've known in the last 45 years is technology. I was a part of this new wave of generation into technology and worked in the technology industry for 35 years. So my daughter often said to me, you know, Dad, I remember you on your phone. I remember you on taking calls. I remember us sitting by the pool and you answering the call on Memorial Day. And she said, you know, at the time I didn't think about it. She said, but I think I got my work ethic from you in watching you make sure that you were providing for the family. And I look at it and say, well, I was disengaged from her, but she now as a 28-year-old and in business looked at it and said, you know, the reason why I was able to rise to what I did and do what I do is because I learned work ethic. Well, that's one way. I appreciate that she looked at it that way, but for me, I see that now as maybe missed engagement opportunities because I was in that old model of I was born to provide for my family. This was the work ethic of Eastern European family that came to this country, and so that's what you did. You were a good citizen because you worked and you contributed and you gave. So
you provided for your family.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, so it was maybe present absent, as opposed to an absent. But then I had a 7-year window where I was a single father. So God kind of locked me into, listen, you can't be present and absent. You've got to be present and present. Is it a losing battle, parenting? There's so many influences. Your kids, you know, so interesting because they're out of the house as much as they're in the house because they're in the public school system.
Right.
And someone would say, well, they don't fit in, or they wouldn't fit in because they don't have the exposure to the levels of the games. They can't really engage, but yet I would suspect your kids probably know enough about the things that are going on around them to be conversational, but not having had that actual hands-on experience, but they're not left out, are they?
So you have to watch your children, right, and kind of see how they're doing. My kids are they love people. So I've never been afraid of, oh no, they're not on Instagram. Like, will my daughter have any friends when she goes into a 6th grade? I've never had that fear. And I also have to say, we've been in the same school from kindergarten to 6th grade. And so they have friends and social networks and people that they have been friends with for a long time. So I've never had that qualm. Now, if my kids were moving right now, right, into a brand new school of junior high, and they didn't have that, I think that would be more challenging for them. However, I totally believe in the power of prayer and the power of a mother and a father praying and seeking God and saying, God, send my child 2 friends or even 1 friend, you know, that they understand and they get, because I think we have this false notion that, oh, if they are on Instagram or Snapchat, then all of a sudden they'll fit in. Well, it's probably more likely that they will be unhappy, depressed, have anxiety, because that's what people are saying. You know, you see it now in the newspaper all the time, like, oh, kids' depression is up and their social media is up, and they compare themselves to each other. And then there's all this, you know, anxiety that comes from
We're talking with Arlene Pellicane, author of Parents Rising, 8 Strategies for Raising Kids Who Love God, Respect Authority, and Value What Is Right. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to get into some of the principles contained inside this book, which it's rich with nuggets of understanding, not just theoretical, but gives you an understanding of how you got where you are and how you can navigate a path out and rise up and accept the challenge that God is giving you to raise up godly children in a godly home. We'll be right back. Shalom. I'm the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, Executive Director of Igniting a Nation and host of the daily TV program Revealing the Truth, seen live every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Standard Time at www.ianbn.com, and then replayed throughout the day and night via our website. All of our segments can be seen on the Igniting a Nation YouTube channel. Since our launch in January of this year, we've expanded our global reach to over 54 countries with a social media following of over 125,000. Our commitment is to bring you the most in-depth interviews with authors, subject matter experts, and thought leaders from around the world. We have interviewed guests from Israel, Brazil, England, India, and all across North America. All of our authors are featured on the Books and Media page on our website, www.ianbn.com. There you can find a direct link to the book you want to order, and we receive a small commission directly from Amazon. There is no cost to you for this service. In addition to our daily teachings and interviews, we make available to you the archive of all of the interviews on our YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram channels. Our live program is available from our homepage, and there is never a charge to you for any of this access. We made the decision long ago that we would remain a commercial-free resource that would not be influenced by any pressure from any outside company. There are only two ways that we are able to continue to operate this ministry and provide you with the only live 4-hour daily Christian television talk show program. The first is through your support and tax-deductible contributions to Igniting a Nation. These can be made directly through the donate button on the website or sent through the mail to Igniting a Nation, 2700 Corporate Drive, Suite 120, Birmingham, Alabama, 35242. The other way we support the program is by offering you a unique opportunity to have access to over 10 years worth of teachings on a subscription basis. The teaching archives contains all of my prior sermons, Torah studies, prophecy in the news videos, and much more for the low subscription price of $5 per month. This subscription grants you unlimited access to over 800 hours of content not available elsewhere and is updated weekly with the most current prophecy classes. In addition to 20 hours of original TV programming each weekday, we invite you to join us live every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday evenings for our Prophecy in the News classes. The times and locations are listed on our events page on the website www.ianbn.com. Every day, you and I are faced with the challenge of where we will go to hear the truth. We are committed to bring you the only program of its kind that covers the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. We cannot do this without your support. Since we launched on January 5th, 2017, we have aired over 300 individual teachings, interviews, and commentaries not available anywhere else. We are now working side by side with almost every major Christian publishing house to bring you the most in-depth feature interviews possible. Our 1-hour features address every subject that affects the believer's life. We are hearing of salvations from the Middle East, Africa, and all across the United States. Lives are being changed every day, and we have only just begun. Our mission is to become your trusted resource and grant you access to the people, tools, and information you need to grow in your relationship with the Lord. You can help us by liking us on social media and through your financial support. We know you have many choices in who you support, but we are prayerfully asking you to consider helping us keep revealing the truth, true to our calling, to cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth like no other program available. Donate today and help us bring the message to the four corners of the earth. Visit www.ianbn.com and donate, buy a book, or subscribe to our teaching archives. Without you, we do not exist. Shalom and welcome back to this edition of Revealing the Truth, where we cover the headlines, the heartlines, and biblical truth. I'm your host, the Reverend Rabbi Eric Walker, and we're talking with Arlene Pellicane, author of Parents Rising, 8 Strategies for Raising Kids Who Love God, Respect Authority, and Value What's Right. Arlene, welcome back to the program.
Thank you so much for having me.
Arlene, in these 8 strategies, you really outline 8 game-changing strategies. One of them being that amusement is not the highest priorities. And we talked a little bit about striking this balance. To what extent do you limit technology in your home?
I think it's a matter of intentionality and purpose. So if you were to look at my home, you might think, oh, there's that author that's supposed to be so different, but she has computers everywhere all throughout her home. And so it is a matter of use and intention. So if you were to walk into the house, you'll see the computer is used for music. And we usually have instrumental music going on or Christian worship music going on. And so you can choose as a parent, what kind of music do I want my children listening to when they walk into our house? And then, of course, the computers are on for homework. And so the kids do their homework. And then when the homework's done, then it is, okay, come away from the computer. Now, I will say we are not like this, oh, so perfect. I'll see my kids. What are they looking at? They're shopping for Nerf guns on the computer. Sometimes they're on the library website, which is kind of cool, checking out books, trying to reserve the books they want. They watch Prager University, which is this amazing online university about big topics and short 5-minute videos. So I'm pretty happy with what I see them looking at online. We keep all the computers in the living room so that there are no devices in the bedrooms. And that was, I think, a very good, just geographic, what you can do for your home is to make sure that the computers are always within sight of the family. So that's how we use them. But we have activities every night, whether it's going to piano lesson or martial arts, and that's family time. We all go together. And then, of course, meal times, there are no screens, and we don't watch a whole lot of TV. So we haven't gotten cable. We've been married for almost 20 years, and our entire 20-year marriage, it started as kind of this funny bet, like we're not going to have cable the first 3 months of marriage, but we ended up liking it so much, we just roll that way. So we do not have cable. We've never had cable. So our kids get that treat where it's like, oh, it's the Olympics. We're going to watch that on the TV with the little rabbit ear. So we realize we're crazy, but we do get DVDs from, obviously we get Netflix and watch movies on purpose, all together as a family. I think viewing things together, that is truly a way you can bond with your children. And I'm not anti-movie at all. I love movies. But the idea is you don't want everyone just on their own little device watching who knows what. And that's the thing.
Arlene, a previous guest gave me the analogy of the 2 ways to keep your cattle. In Australia, there's 2 different methods. One is to build fences, and the people who build fences to keep their cattle in wind up spending more money and time to repair those fences, and the cattle break through the fence. Or you can go the other method, and that is to put a well in the center of the pasture so that it's the gathering place. This is exactly what you're talking about. Rather than building fences, you have everything congregated in one place, so your kids are actually, if they're on the computer, they're in the same place. They're maybe even exchanging or dialoguing or talking about what it is that they're looking at,
right.
Or come check this out, and oh, yeah, I think you'd find this interesting. I found this or found that. And
right.
it's putting it where they gravitate towards the community of family as opposed to the separate, private, because there is something to be said for a certain amount of privacy, but you open up the opportunity. It's kind of like the message to Cain, sin is crouching at your door. If you don't tame it, it will overtake you. This idea of putting temptation in the way, why expose them to temptation if you don't have to?
Absolutely. And that is I love that it's the well the fun place. You make that it's fun to communicate and have fun and play together and play games together. And when that privacy is needed, which all of us have a little, all of our family members have a little introvert in us where we need, hey, we need some space. That's totally fine. They retreat in their rooms, but it is screen free. And I know that they're in there with a book. I know that they're not in there with a phone or with an iPad, and that brings a lot of peace as a parent. So I think that is an awesome rule, is overnight, no screens in the bedroom, whether your kid is 5 or whether your child is 17. And your kids will not say, "Oh, this is wonderful, mom or dad. You're taking my phone at 10 p.m. Thanks." No one's going to thank you. They're going to be upset. They're going to be mad. But in the long run, I believe they will thank you, because at 1 o'clock in the morning, no one's texting, "Hey, you want to go to the Bible study on Friday?" That is not what is happening. And so you as a parent need to realize that, okay, amusing my child 24/7 is not my priority. Making my child happy all the time is not my priority. It is character. And so if character is the priority in this home, then hey, we're going to collect devices at night. We're going to not make it this private thing, but make it more of a fun thing for all of us. Because I think with lip service, we as parents say, yeah, we want character. But in daily life, it's so much more convenient to just say, oh, yeah, watch that, or play the game. Just stay out of my hair for 20 minutes. And we're all like this. We're all guilty of this. And so we've got to back up and say, wait a minute, amusement is not my priority. I'm not the cruise director here. I'm the parent. And so that means I will collect devices. We will do this responsibly. Steve Jobs, who of course is a huge proponent of technology, when the reporter Nick Bolton went into his home, what was missing? The iPad. He did not let his own children use the iPad. And that should tell us as parents, that's very telling. Like, okay, if he didn't use it, there's probably a reason why. And so don't be afraid of having your kids use their devices for schoolwork, because I know a lot of schools give it, require it. You put your homework on that. But when that's done, you go ahead and collect that device, and don't be afraid to do that as a parent.
How does that tie into making the home a safer place? And then carrying that same theme, we look at these school situations, we look at what contingency plans or lack of sometimes contingency plans or security plans, but how does this feed into creating a safer environment at home with the social media and the cyberbullying and the public shaming kind of issues that kids can be pretty vicious at times?
This is huge, because many times we as parents give the phone because we think, okay, if Johnny has his little phone, he'll be safer. Like, he'll be able to call us if he needs us for an emergency. But in truth, if there's an emergency or something, Johnny's got 10 people around him, most likely, that have a phone. And it's much easier than finding the payphone of yesteryear. And instead, what we've given Johnny, and maybe more importantly, our little girl, is, when you hear these awful stories about predators and about people that are disguising as kids, but they're adults and they're reaching out to these kids, they're not going to be able to reach your kid if your kid doesn't have an account, a social media account. It's going to be awfully hard for that predator to find your child and to tell your child, hey, your child thinks this is a 12-year-old boy they're talking to, but it's really a 23-year-old man. And that person is going to say, meet me at the park at 5, texting, and your girl's going to go like, okay. But if your girl does not have that phone, she's not going to be having that conversation with that stranger. So many times I think we give the phone because we think it makes them safer because they can reach us as parents, but we're opening the door to all sorts of course, that is maybe the extreme, that a predator would find your child, but it is entirely possible. That's an extreme, but for sure, your child is going to be exposed to a lot of things, whether it's music, videos, inappropriate pictures, texts, bullying, those kinds of things that really can be easily avoided if you will just stand up as a parent and say, we're not going to play that. You can, when you're 18, you can have your nose in your phone and have all the social media you want. But while you are in my roof, I will limit that for your health and your well-being. And believe it or not, that's, people are so afraid to go outside with their kids because we watch the news and we think someone's going to swoop up my child if they go outside. So we send our kids inside with all these devices. which is probably more dangerous because it's much more common for your child to get hooked on this thing than if they were to get picked up on the street. So I think we are fearful, but perhaps we're fearful of the wrong things. And we need to think of this more with caution tape than letting our kids play outside.
You know, some might say that you're espousing some old school, old style parenting, even back to the, harkening back to my generation, which was, you know, we got on our bicycles on Saturday morning after Shabbat services, and we were told that you head home when the streetlights come on.
Right.
They had no idea where we were.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they had no idea what direction we had headed in. I used to have a bunch of neighborhood kids. We would ride our bikes to Forbes Field, which is in Pittsburgh, to the ballpark, and see if any balls were hit over the wall and try to run, and then wait for the players to come out through the big gate when they were leaving and get them to autograph, and try to get them to autograph baseball cards. And that was a big thing we did when there was a home game. You know, in the wintertime, we went outside and you know, go shovel the neighbor's driveway, go shovel the neighbor's sidewalk. Well, why would I want to do that? Because they don't have kids of their own. So you go over there and do that. So you learned it, and I was a candy striper. You had to serve. Everybody in the family had to serve in some capacity and give back to the community. That, you know, that was old school. Those were the old school Eastern European values that my family brought with them from the old country to America, which was a new country for them, but the ideals and the assimilation into society was not predicated. We were Americans. We were told that, you know, don't tell them you're Hungarian, don't tell them you're Jewish, you tell them you're an American. When people say, what are you? I'm an American. That was drilled into me. You're an American. But this idea of families sitting down at the dinner table, even to the point where my father never thought that fast food would ever become an industry.
Right, like who's going to go to that?
Right. When are we going to get to the point where the family no longer sits down at the dinner table together? What kind of concept is that? And he rejected it completely. Mm-hmm. Okay? We were not fast food kids. I'm not a fast food person today, probably because of that influence. It was a sit down at the table, and it was when your father gets home, that's when we have dinner. So it's kind of old school parenting. Why do you think that maybe Grandma gets it right?
She does get it right, doesn't she? As you're talking, it's like, that sounds really good. Like, this old school is ripe for a comeback because, you know, we always want what's new and what's modern. You know, one of my friends, Kendra Smiley, she is a grandmother, been married over 40 years, an author. And she says, I don't get it these days. People put on Facebook, you know, my child has a 103 temperature. What should I do? And you get all these opinions. She said, why don't you just call the doctor? And the idea is, we're looking for all this advice among our peers, but our peers may not know. But your mom or your grandma or your grandpa or your dad, they might know. So it's this whole idea that we love what's new, but what's new is currently not working. And so we need to go to what's old and say, wait a minute, these values, when you went bike riding, my husband grew up the exact same way. He said, I would ride miles away in Long Island, New York, and my parents would have no idea where we were, but we knew we had to be home by supper. And what did that teach him? He wasn't alone. He was always with his friends. And so it taught them independence. It taught them problem solving. If they got a flat tire, they had to figure that out. They had to learn how to fix the flat tire. They just had to learn a whole lot that our kids are not necessarily learning because they just text us, Mommy, I'm in trouble. And we just, boom, we just sweep them up. And so our kids are missing out, I think, on that independence because they are so tightly kept by their parents I'm not saying to be unwise, know your child, know your neighborhood, all those things, but just that idea that kids don't have that anymore, that dinner table is empty because everyone's on the run. They're in their vans and they're headed for soccer practice, and then they're headed for another practice and another, and they're shoving the food down. So that's one of the principles in Parents Rising, is to have good food served at the table, both in relationship building and also nutritionally. And so I think the old school is something that it's going to come more perhaps in vogue as people do it and realize, hey, you know what, my grandma, she wasn't as stressed out as I was. I should follow what she did. She didn't lecture her kids and do all this, explanation. She just said, clean your room. And they cleaned their room. We've made it kind of complicated.
We certainly have. One of the other principles that you talk about in the book is the outsourcing of discipleship. Uh, I had the congregational philosophy when I would, the founding rabbi of a congregation here in Birmingham, that kids were to be included in the service. They were to be raised up from babies. I didn't believe in crying rooms. Let the child cry. You got a baby, let them cry. If other people are disturbed, they can leave. Okay, I can preach over a crying baby. In Kenya, they preach over crying babies. In Korea, they preach over crying babies. They don't have sound systems in tents where in some parts of the world where people are gathering and babies are crying. So let your baby cry. Change your baby right there. I don't, let your child run. Let them have a relationship with the rabbi. Let them, when it comes time to dismiss them after the before the sermon and go to their own little group, let them come running forward and be embraced and let me speak to them and pray over them before they go. Because this idea of dropping your kid off in one building while you go worship in another building, and then they grow up in a culture where the youth pastor becomes the spiritual head, and you don't have to do that because it's done for you. You're not a fan of that, are you?
I'm not. And so it is the idea that you want worship to be a part of your life, both on Sunday morning, on Sabbath, and also all the way through the week, that they see you as part of that spiritual foundation, and that we don't think, oh, well, my kid goes to Christian school, it's taken care of. Or, well, my kid goes to Sunday school, they're fine. But to realize, no, that is my responsibility to make sure that they are learning about the love of God through my life, both caught and taught. So both those purposeful words that you are giving to your child, but also the way they watch you. So I love to encourage parents, because sometimes we feel like, oh, I don't have a degree in Bible, I don't know as much, who am I to teach my children? But I'll even tease parents and say, if you hear the little pitter patter of feet coming down the hall, you just grab your Bible and you turn it and you say, oh, look, Mom and Dad, we're reading the Bible. And, you fake it until it's a real part of your life, because the truth is, when your kids graduate out of your home, and they're asked, did you ever see your mom or dad read the Bible? Like, do they actually pray? You don't want your child to say, well, gee, I never actually saw my parent read the Bible, or I never really heard them pray. You want them to say, oh, yeah, I saw my parents regularly open the Bible and read it for themselves, or open the Bible and share a few verses with us. I saw that regularly. And, when your kid comes home from school and says, so-and-so is being so mean to me, my third grader, that just happened yesterday, say, okay, let's pray about that right now. Lord, I pray for Mary, that you touch her heart, soften her heart, help my daughter, in Jesus' name, amen. You don't have to make it this you have to bring them deep, because that's so important.
Well, you bring up a good point. Teaching children to pray, is something that they're not going to learn elsewhere. It can't be a do as I say, not as I do kind of environment. And that's, I was kind of raised in that you speak when you're spoken to kind of world. There's some things about the old school that were great. There were things about the old school that were not so great. having a voice. I think that we should raise our children to have a voice, but in a respectful dialogue. It's not just dictatorship in parenting. It's not the parental terrorist, that deals as if they're an anti-terrorist organization, the children of the terrorists. So as we move towards the kind of the back part of our interview here, you and I have had this conversation before, actually several times, both on air and off air, about understanding the role of a parent and defining the fact that you are not raising children. Share with me your philosophy on that and how you approach it in the book.
Yeah, the last chapter in the book is launching adults, not babying children. It's that strategy number 8 in Parents Rising. And it's this idea of the mindset of the parent that this is not a child, this is a future adult. And so how can I give skills to this child so that when they do grow up as an adult, they know how to balance a checkbook, they know how to treat someone when they need to apologize, they know how to make their own bed and do their own laundry, all the skills that they need because they're a future adult. It means that if my 5-year-old is crying at the restaurant and I hand them an iPad, that I think, wait a minute, if you as a 5-year-old can't sit here for 5 minutes without throwing a fit, you have no self-control. This is not going to be good when you're an adult. So if I'm raising a child, I just give the iPad. I want peace and quiet. But if I'm raising a future adult, then something clicks in my mind and says, wait a minute, you're not going to do so well. Let me take that away from you so you can learn as a 5-year-old how to sit for 5 minutes, coloring, talking, doodling, until your food comes. It's a whole different mindset. It keeps you thinking, okay, what are the next, 2 skills my child needs to learn, whether it's tying their shoes, or right now I have a boy that is about to enter high school. So, now he has a debit card and he makes his own purchases and he's learning about money. And, soon, we talk about the birds and the bees, and soon I'll take him out, just the 2 of us, and I'll talk about when you go out with a girl, this is how you treat her. So it's just this idea of I'm launching a future adult. What does he need to know? And for parents, it is about limiting yourself, because what do we like to do? Fix things, especially us moms. We like to fix things, do things for our kids. The classic story in our family is when my husband James was teaching our son Ethan how to mow the lawn. And I saw Ethan with the garbage can trying to get the grass and he was really struggling. So I came up to help him, holding it up. And James came around the corner and said, "What are you doing?" And he had just had this talk with Ethan, about this is how you do it. You do it by yourself and you just stand here till you get it done. And he couldn't believe now mom is doing it. And moms, we do this all the time. We don't mean to, but we intervene and we do too much for our kids. So that is like our funny, the lawnmower, the grass, leave them alone. Because when a mom sees that, we think, oh, let me help my baby boy. But when a dad sees it, it's like, oh, my boy is becoming a man, And so we, especially as moms, and some of you dads out there are this way too, need to step back sometimes and allow our children to do the things they can. And that's important. I have a 3rd grader. She's been packing her own lunch, I think, for 2 years now. They can do it. And so let them do things so that they're learning how to be independent.
Well, I think in some cases, expectation breeds inspiration. And
Yes.
When you challenge a child to do more, you challenge them to be more, that they'll rise to the challenge because they're little approval seekers. And they can be little dividers of putting a wedge between mom and dad if you give them the power and authority. But if we look at the future and future generations, we're raising future mothers and fathers, future husbands and wives, and you only have a period of time in the grand scheme of things, it becomes a diminishing percentage of their life. But it's the foundation. Your house can't stand without a solid foundation. But your child is not all the rooms in your house. You're raising the child as the foundation for the house that they will build, which is called their life. And so I just am so encouraged by what you're doing and the work you're doing, and you continue to empower families to really rise up to this wonderful opportunity to embrace the gift of children, the gift of parenting, the challenges. You don't deny that there are challenges. You don't,
Right.
you don't water it down, but you equip because there is an equipping that needs to be done, and a paradigm shift has to take place in order for the husband and wife to come together and really say, how are we going to, right now we're on polar opposite sides of the spectrum of independence, or we're our technology or whatever. You're not here when they come home from school, you're at work, and I have to deal with this. And finding a way to be more of the couple, be more of the team, be more of the, not allow the children to be the cleaver that breaks up the cleaving.
Right.
And that happens in many families. We've been talking with Arlene Pellicane, author of Parents Rising, 8 Strategies for Raising Kids Who Love God, Respect Authority, and Value What's Right. Who would not want to have a child that loves God, respects authority, and values what is right? If you don't know how, or if you feel like it's slipping away, or do you feel like you've never had it and you'd like to get that, this is the book for you. All of those situations are addressed in these pages. I can't recommend Arlene Pellicane's work highly enough. Arlene, thank you so much for, again, being a great guest here on Revealing the Truth.
Thank you so much, and I wholeheartedly agree with those comments you just said. Thank you so much.
Thank you. God bless you. We're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we'll bring in the next edition of Revealing the Truth.